pray with all of me that this does not fall over while I'm filming or just ever. Okay, so it's super low lighting, so I won't really be able to move my hands around too much, otherwise it won't be focused very often, which is going to be hard for me because I'm Italian. Okay, I can't make any promises. Hi guys, I'm Steph and welcome back to my channel. Sorry that this video is a little bit late. I've been trying to get onto this video for the past like 2 weeks, but it's just been a little bit hard with all the activities that we have had going on in our family lately. We've had weddings, we've had birthday parties, Father's Day, you name it. So we've been super busy. But it's so good to finally have been able to sit down and get all these DIYs put together for fall/autumn, we call it in Australia. So the DIYs kind of went overtime today, hence the reason I'm filming at night. But it kind of works in my favor because I wanted it to feel a bit more cozy with the candlelight in the background. For I feel that it is very fitting for this fall haul. No, I just wanted to rhyme. This is a bit of a tongue twister. For I feel that it is very fitting for this fall DIY video. Yes, it is a fall DIY. Yeah, no. It is 5 fall farmhouse inspired DIYs for you guys. There you go. I wanted to stick with all the FFF. Actually, it is a trifecta. Trifecta is 3. And then we just add on the DIY like a boss. And yes, so I am probably one of the only Australians that actually have done autumn/fall decor this year. So if you are Australian and you do fall decorating and DIYs, please don't hate on me. I'm just making a general statement. As for Australians, we don't really ever celebrate or decorate for fall or autumn. First of all, mainly because we don't really have a massive dramatic change of the seasons for most of the country. We don't have maple trees or maple leaves, or at least in any of the places in Australia that I have been to. In Queensland where I live, we don't even get the change of seasons with the weather so much. It's all very same all year round. It does get a bit cooler this time of the year, but that's about it. However, despite this, I have decided to embrace fall and autumn and decorate for all seasons that I possibly can, mainly because I love to decorate and I love doing DIYs, and also because I've always wanted to live in a place where you can see the change of the seasons physically and temperaturally. I don't know. You get the idea. So without any further ado, let's get on to the video. Okay guys, so for this simple fall wreath, I just started out with a plain wire wreath structure, and then I just used some of these leaves that I found and collected at the beach. And I know they're not maple leaves, but there are no such thing where I live, so I decided to do a more Australian version. And I think the colours in them worked really well for fall with the orange and yellow tones. Not to mention I didn't want to buy anything if I could help it, as I wanted this to be as natural and as affordable as possible. And this just also goes to show that you don't have to spend a lot of money on DIY projects. I guess if you spend a lot of money on a DIY project, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the DIY in the end anyway, unless you're wanting something specific and you aren't able to find it anywhere. Otherwise, normally a DIY that I do is just to get a look for less, or to bring to life an idea that I've had, or to help fulfill a need that we have at home, etc, etc. You get the idea. Anyway, enough about that and moving on to the actual project. So as you can see, I kind of just went to town with sticking the leaves wherever I wanted, all over my wreath, just to cover up all the wire, and I just used hot glue. On, I decided to create a little hanging strap for my wreath to hang from, And for this I just used some basic plain burlap fabric. I cut a strip that was probably too long in hindsight, and then I had to cut it down a few times. And then I just added on a strip of black ribbon that I had at home already, using a hot glue gun again, stuck it to the center. And then I simply just use hot glue gun to fold and secure the rough edges, and then again hot glue to secure it all together. And voila! There you have it, one fall inspired wreath. This next project, I'm starting off with the Acorn inspired candle, and for this project I chose to use my go-to cedar wood balls, which if you follow me you will know that I've used these in majority of my DIYs lately. And then I chose to use the wooden handle part of this cookie fondant stamp that I picked up at Kohl's for $1. And then I just used this glass jar that I picked up specifically for this project, as I thought it looked just like the base of an acorn. And then I just used this wood lid that belonged to a Kmart canister that I had lying around as the base to the lid of my candle. And then just taking my trusty hot glue gun, I glued the wood handle from the stamp to the wooden lid, and this is what it looks like. And now to make it look super acorny, I then hot glued the cedar wood balls evenly around the whole circumference of the lid in 2 rows. I also really loved how the wooden handle from the stamp gave a little bit more height to the center row of wooden balls, which helped make it look a little bit more three-dimensional overall. And the final step I did to finish off the lid of my little acorn candle, I just took some of the wood stain that I already had and stained it all and then set it aside to dry. And here's just a quick little sneak peek of what it looks like so far. And now moving on to the actual candle part of this candle DIY, I just picked up some cheap, inexpensive candles from my local dollar stores, as I found it really hard to find any beeswax or soy wax from any stores near me locally. And so I just started to shave and cut up the candles that I bought, and then I also salvaged the wicks from these candles as well, which was really handy and saved time and money. And then I just used a bit of hot glue to then secure the base of that wick in the center of the jars. And then I just simply poked a hole in a paddle pop stick to poke the wick through to help keep the wick centered and in place while the wax is being poured in. And I just did the exact same thing with all 3 candles, and then I continued to just cut up all the wax and pop it into my little heat safe Pyrex bowl. You're going to be famous on my YouTube channel.
No.
And then I employed some helping hands, aka my brother-in-law Alex and my husband Davide. And once you're finally finished with cutting up all the wax and you've got all the wax you think you'll need for your candle, you can then pop it into some hot water, preferably not boiling, otherwise it'll just bubble over and get into your wax. And then just keep stirring continuously until all the wax is fully melted and see-through. And then for mine, I chose to use a bit of ground allspice. And I also used a bit of cinnamon sugar, even though I would have just used cinnamon if I had had just that spice alone. But, you know, desperate times call for desperate measures. And I did this to just try and add a little bit of extra scent to my candles, and also in hopes to add a little bit more color to my candles, because I didn't have any spare crayons at home to melt in for color. If you do want to make this project at home though, I strongly recommend you go out and buy some crayons if you don't already have some at home, just to make your candles a little bit more brown colored, as mine didn't turn out so brown in the end, as you'll see now that the spices did not melt down properly and all sank to the bottom of my candles. So yeah, don't recommend it. And when I finished pouring all my wax in, I just left my candle aside to fully set and dry. And here's my candle the next day. And all my candles ended up having this little dip in the middle. I've never done this before. I've never made candles before like this. So if anyone can tell me why this happened, please let me know. I'm really curious to find out. Otherwise, that everything went well. Obviously the color isn't really brown, it's more like charcoal-y colored. In the end, I think with the lid, everything tied together nicely anyway. But maybe it would have been that much better if the candle itself was actually a bit more brown in color. Who knows? And then I went ahead and added a little bit more of a Stephanie touch to it as well by using a little wooden tag and some jute twine. I just took off the little keychain part and then drew on a little monogram picture of a leaf, a maple leaf to be specific, and some little stars. And then on the other side I just wrote fall, just to add a little bit of extra something something to the outside of the candle. And the next candle is a pumpkin inspired candle. And for this I started out with a basic ribbed glass jar with a lid. And then I started cutting up a pumpkin spice scented candle that I picked up at the dollar store. I also chopped up and added in these 2 little Yankee Candle melts that was also pumpkin spiced flavored and autumn flavored apparently, which I chose to use not just for the scent but also for the color. And then again I just used the same process to melt all the wax down, and then I simply poured it into my jar. And then because the wax did not make enough to fill it up all the way to the top, we then tried to swish the wax all around the rim of the top, as you can see us doing here, just to give a bit more color all the way to the top of the jar. So on that note of not having enough wax, just a little tip is to always put a lot more wax into your pot to melt down than you think you'll need, as it always melts down to a lot less than you think you'll have in the end. And here's my little pumpkin candle, all fully set and dried. Also, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Beth from Cooking and Crafting, who actually gave me the inspiration to make these candles. I was originally inspired from her DIY mason jar pumpkins. So hi Beth if you're watching, and thanks a lot for the inspiration. And go check out her channel guys if you haven't yet already. I highly recommend it. Anyways, back to the DIY. So what I've done here is I've just mixed up some standard acrylic paint to best match the orange color of the pumpkin candle. And then I've just gone around the rim and filled in all the blank areas around the jar. And then with the same paint, I've just gone in and brushed it all inside the glass lid, covering every area except for the little knob handle at the top. And I just mixed up some brown acrylic paint for the little handle section of the jar and brushed it all inside to help create the illusion of the stem of a pumpkin. And once all that is dried, then I've just gone in for some finishing touches by taking some very similar orange colored wool twine and wrapping that around the groove of the jar. And then I've taken some fake leaves and hot glued them to the top of the jar as well. Now to make the little pumpkin tendrils, I've just taken some standard jute twine and used one of my fine color markers that is alcohol ink based, and just rub that all along the length of the string that I plan to use. And then I just wrapped it around the little stem handle a few times, and then I just kept twisting the twine so it would turn in on itself and create these lovely little spirals. And then I just secured those spirals with hot glue as well to then give the best looking pumpkin tendrils that I could possibly manage. Obviously, this is all optional and you have free rule and reign to do your pumpkin tendrils as you choose and as you please. And I also think it would work really well with twine or ribbon that is wired, so it holds the spirals naturally without having to be secured with glue. And that's pretty much it guys for my little candle pumpkin. I hope you like it. So moving on to the last candle of the trio, this one is supposed to be a pine cone. However, I just used this little glass jar that I think was supposed to represent berries or some kind of grapes, in hopes that it would represent a pine cone when I put in some dark coloured wax. I just found this little glass tea light holder from my local dollar store for a few dollars. And as you can see, we're doing the exact same process in cutting up the candles and mixing in the black and white wax. And then again, we're just using the same bain-marie method to melt down the wax as the two previous times before. And again, I've tried to add the cinnamon sugar and the ground allspice again. Clearly I didn't learn very well from the first time, but this time I thought that if I let it melt down and dissolve more into the actual wax, it would actually help change the color. And again, this did not work at all for me. As you'll see, when it dries, it just turns very light grey, instead of a darker brown that I was hoping for. And once my candle had set and cooled, I just brushed on some brown acrylic paint, the same one that I used before for the pumpkin, just to give it a darker pine cone color to it. So to complete this trio of candles, I chose to refurb, paint and distress this wood-turned trio of candle holders that I had already. And then on top I just used some coasters and rested them on top to give my candles a little bit more stability. And here's the finished product, guys. I hope you like them as much as I do. And if this has inspired you to make your own fall candles as well, then be sure to let me know and share it with me, as I'd love to see, guys. Alright, so for this simple, inexpensive yet very effective fall garland, I started out using my watercolor paints to fill in an entire page using different shades of yellow, red and orange. I then cut out a standard piece of paper in the shape of a maple leaf that I had printed off the computer and then used that as a stencil to then trace around and fit as many of these little maple leaves onto my A4 page as possible. And the reason I did this is, one, because it's cheaper than buying faux maple leaves that cost virtually nothing, and also for the fact that I could not find one single bunch of any fake maple leaves at all locally, so I got creative and made my own. Now if you want to use my maple leaf creations as well, then that's going to be very easy for you, as I have scanned in this picture of my A4 sheet of maple leaves, and I'll attach a link to a Dropbox folder with them in it for anyone who would like to use it, or you could make your own, but this will just save you a little bit of time and hassle if you want to use mine. Or alternatively, you could just use fake maple leaves or real maple leaves if you actually have them as well. And then I just went ahead and cut all of my little maple leaves out, which did take me a little bit of time, but I got there in the end. I then also really wanted to add in some stars of anise in there, but I did not have any at home, and I did not want to go out all the way to the shops just to buy them. So I got really creative and resourceful and took my hot glue gun and some cloves that I already had in my cupboard and just started to glue them together in a star-like shape, making sure to leave a hole in the middle for the rope to be threaded through. If you want to try this at home, I would recommend it. It wasn't very hard, I didn't burn myself, and they don't have to be perfect, clearly mine aren't, and you can just have some real fun with it. And ta-da! Here you have it, some very cute clove stars of anise that you can add to your garland. And they also smell fabulous. Next, I just ripped out a few pages from an old thrifted book that I have, then cut out a smaller maple leaf than before, then traced and cut out the exact same amount of leaves as I had before in the coloured versions. Then taking some thin jute rope, I just cut out the length that I wanted my garland to be, and also using some small wooden pegs and scissors, then started to create my garland and put it all together. And that's about it, guys. As I said before, this project is quite inexpensive, costing me next to nothing. It is very simple as well. However, it does take a little bit of time, although I think you could reduce this time by half if you actually started out with real or faux maple leaves already from the beginning. And here's the garland finished in all its glory. It really does add a lot of movement and a nice little touch to my bar cart, I thought. So for this mason jar lanterns DIY, you'll need some mason jars, some rope, some wooden beads, some paint, and some alphabet stickers. And here I'm just cleaning my mason jars thoroughly so the paint will stick really well to them. And then taking my alphabet stickers, I just started to peel off the letters I wanted to spell out the word home, and then stuck them down real good to my mason jars so no paint would seep through. I also made sure to use the first letter I stuck on my first jar as measurement and placement reference to stick the other letters on the alternate jars. And that way they will all be evenly and nicely lined up next to each other. Also, I feel like I should mention that this DIY was also inspired by another YouTuber, Christy Mel. You probably know who she is. She's fantastic. If you haven't checked out her channel already, definitely go check it out. She's got some great little DIYs and decor tips on there. She also did a fall mason jar lanterns DIY. However, mine does differ a little bit as mine is more personal to me. Once all my stickers were stuck onto my jars, I then went in with my trusty Hames paint sample pot in the shade white on white, and then just taking a little paintbrush proceeded to slather paint all over the outside of my jars. So with my jars, I decided to do 2 coats of paint as I wanted a very opaque look. However, this can differ depending on what kind of paint you are using. Then once my paint dried / almost dried, I then went ahead and started to peel away the alphabet stickers, therefore leaving a nice transparent shape of a letter in each jar. And you've got to admit how satisfying it is to watch the letters being peeled off. If you're the same as me, then leave a comment down below. Okay, so next step, I then took some really thick jute rope and cut off 4 pieces to make the handles for my lanterns, to which I then secured in place using hot glue. And then I also cut and added on some jute rope on the front and back of the rims of the jars, just for aesthetics. Once I'd finished off with the rope, I then wanted to add a little bit more something to the jars, so I used these wooden beads that I had lying around my craft area and just used some hot glue to also adhere these wood beads to the front halves of the rim of the jars. And I feel that these gave it a little bit more of a Magnolia Market touch to it, which I absolutely love as well, which of course is completely optional. And here's the finished product, guys. I chose to write the word home instead of fall so I could keep these out and use them throughout all seasons instead of just one specific season. That's just for me personally, but you could also write fall or thanks or grateful or thankful if you have more jars. That's just some of my ideas, but you feel free to get as creative as you like with it. Now onto the last project of this video, and probably one of my favorites actually. I've just got these little DIY no sew, no glue stuffed plush pumpkins. So for these little cuties, I just started out with some basic cotton orange fabric. You can use whatever color you want, and I've just used my wreath to outline a circle for me, to which I added and left a few more inches on the circumference just to make the circle a little bit bigger. And once I had traced and cut out my circle, I then went ahead and stole some of this stuffing from this $4 pillow that I picked up at Kmart specifically for this project, as it's cheaper than buying a bag of the stuffing instead. Then I just took a standard rubber band closest to the orange color of the fabric that I could find. I then started to gather up all the sides of the fabric and almost wrap the stuffing on the inside with the fabric, and then secured it with my rubber band. Now it looks a bit like an onion. However, to make it more pumpkin-like, I then used my trusty jute twine and started to wrap it all around the base of my pumpkin, diagonally from one side to the other, which you'll then see starts to give the pumpkin the little grooves and notches that a pumpkin actually has. And once I'd done all my rounds with the string, I then simply brought it up and wrapped it around the piece of fabric at the top many times to make the little stem of the pumpkin, and then brought it back down and secured it with a knot. And voila, a super cute little plushy pumpkin. In fact, I liked this project so much that I went ahead straight away and made another one. This one was a lot bigger though, and I wanted to trial using a square piece of fabric as opposed to a circle piece of fabric. And then I proceeded to take more stuffing out of the $4 cushion, and I still have a lot of stuffing left inside that cushion. So it goes to show how far one $4 cushion goes for these projects. And as you can see, I really couldn't resist giving this piece of stuffing a giant hug as it looks so fluffy. But anyways, back to business. I then continued with the exact same method and process as the little circle pumpkin I made by gathering up all the sides of the fabric and wrapping the stuffing. It does take a little bit of molding and reworking, but sooner or later you get the hang of it, and it's just about having a bit of fun and expressing some creativity in the end, so you can't go wrong. And each pumpkin in real life looks different, so do not worry, nobody's pumpkin is perfect. And for this bigger pumpkin, I just used some thicker jute twine / jute rope, and again wrapped it around the base of the pumpkin diagonally back and forth to get those lovely notches and grooves that a real pumpkin has, and then continue to bring it up across and over that bunch of fabric at the top all the way up, and then I brought some of it back down again and secured it with a knot in order to create the stem of the pumpkin. And that is pretty much all there is to it, guys. Again, it's a very simple DIY, but very effective. I also think that this would be a great idea to do with children as well. And after creating both pumpkins, one from a square piece of fabric and one from a circular piece of fabric, I really have to say that I couldn't really tell much of a difference. So just use whatever you've got at home, and maybe you don't need to waste as much fabric by making a circle and just using a square, because if you ever need, you could always unwrap this and unravel it and reuse that piece of fabric for something else one day. That's my 5 fall farmhouse DIYs for you. I hope you really enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for dropping by and watching. I really appreciate it. If you did like it, please don't forget to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. Come and join my small but growing Restyler family. We'd love to have you around, and I'll see you next time, guys. Thank you so much.